Morning. Hopefully this is coming through all right. Apologies for those who have been waiting very patiently in the chat. We had many this morning. There's been a couple of stories this weekend about misogynism creeping back into policing. I don't even mean the London Met Police on this occasion. We obviously know that they have been officially labelled as institutionally racist, misogynistic, homophobic. But this is from a couple of... Usually we're used to the police forces around the country being more professional. And yet we've had a couple of issues. And I don't want to cast aspersions at the police directly. It may be the CPS. It may be just that the law is not clear in a couple of areas. But there's been a couple of cases where you look at it and you think, well, this doesn't sound quite right, does it? And is this conscious or unconscious bias in favor of like white males? So, and it got me to thinking, if you think about it, so we had 13 years of Labour government in my adult life, and now we've had 13 years of Conservative government, or a few days away from 13 years of Conservative government. And I think to myself, so in terms of legislation to improve people's lives, basically enhance equality, what have we got from the Conservatives? We've got the gay marriage. And I'm thinking, is that it? Is that it? That's it, isn't it? Whereas you think for Labour, what did we get to improve equality? We got minimum wage. We got, I know as a teacher, school kids, the government literally doubled the funding in schools. You had tens of thousands more nurses and doctors, whereas now we've got tens of thousands fewer nurses and doctors. Social mobility, many more people from ordinary backgrounds being able to go to university. Sure Start centres, Angela Rayner occasionally mentions those. Winter fuel payments started under Labour. Extended paid annual leave, that was improved. They raised 1 million pensioners out of poverty, over 500,000 kids out of poverty, whereas again, poverty levels have increased again since then. Scrapped Section 28, introduced civil partnerships, New Deal, child trust funds, GP guaranteed in 48 hours, education maintenance allowance, that's gone. Equalities Act, Disability Rights Commission, all of these things, you could, for every year that Labour were in power, there were like multiple pieces of legislation specifically designed to try to improve equality. Sorry if it looks like it's not keeping up too well. It's we streamed this. It's not my internet, by the way. My internet's superb, but we streamed this through Graham's computer, because his channel. And unfortunately, he's on holiday, but then the holiday place apparently told him to sod off earlier than he was planning on sodding off. So he's now sodded off, and he's in a cafe trying to run through this. But to get onto these stories I was talking about, again, which shows the need for more legislation. So people may have seen this. Stella Creasy, who is a Labour MP, people may know her, backbench MP. She's very prominent in the Rejoin movement, anti-Brexit movement, but she's also a big campaigner of, I suppose you'd say, young new mothers in the workplace. She very famously has brought her baby and infant into the House of Commons for debates. And she has been targeted recently by a political opponent, not a politician, a member of the public, and and I don't mean like they sent her letters or said things about her on Twitter or anything like that. We're not talking about engaging with her on a public forum, whether appropriately or not. What this person did is said, I don't like you, so I'm going to make your life miserable. And he called social services to say that she was neglecting or abusing her children. Now, obviously, and it was a false allegation. It's now been cleared up. It was a false allegation. And an investigation was conducted. Of course, it is. You have to take these things seriously. So inevitably, there's an investigation. And at the end of it, the police and social services have both agreed that the allegation was vexatious. There was absolutely no ground for it at all. So you think to yourself immediately in terms of, wasting public time or there must be any number of offences which have been committed here. The perpetrator has not been charged. Now, what is most shocking to me, and you think to yourself, well, maybe this is just a case of a little bit of a crack in the law, improved legislation. But let me tell you what the police actually said. And this isn't the Met Police, this is Leicestershire Police. So this is one of the other police forces. And what they said is that calling social services to make a vexatious allegation against her was a legitimate form of political protest. The police have actually said that because Creasy is a politician, that she can expect behavior like this. And I thought, this is incredible. This is not the Met. We're used to this sort of behavior from the Met, and much worse from that fetid swamp. But although other police forces are not perfect, they do tend to represent the community more effectively. And you think, what would happen? Because I'd be interested. I don't want anyone to try this, by the way. But what would happen if someone did the same to Jacob Rees-Mogg? If someone contacted social services to say they had witnessed him abusing his children, the investigation, I imagine, would be incredibly quick. And whoever made the allegation, I think, would be charged with something, at the very least, wasting police time. And you just think to yourself, it's incredible, isn't it? A legitimate form of protest is to call social services and say that you're abusing your children. That's legitimate, apparently, according to these police. So that is straight away something I was thinking to myself, well, when Labour in power, surely there is, and if the police can't work out how to apply a general law to deal with what is clear, vindictive, vexatious trolling, then you've got an example of specific legislation. But the other one I want to bring in before we come to some of the questions in the chat is there was another case, but this is the reverse case. So this is a case of a gentleman in a restaurant who's causing some trouble, causing some aggro, and security go up and sort of say, can you calm down, please? And he begins racially abusing them, as far as I can tell. So they decide he's not calming down, so they try to remove him from the restaurant. He punches one of the security guards in the back of the head multiple times and then tries to choke him. Eventually, the police arrive. He abuses the police. I'll tell you what he said in a minute, because I don't want to, if anyone hasn't heard it, guess who this is. Abuses the police, is arrested, but then no charge at all. He has assaulted people. He has caused a disturbance. He's abused the police, no charge at all. And what this person actually said was, and then you'll see, maybe see why, he said to the police arrived, you can't arrest me, I'm the mayor. So this is the Tory mayor of Bury St Edmunds, basically. Violent altercation, racially abused security, assaulted security, punched them in the head, punched one of the security guards in the head a couple of times and tried to choke them, abusive to the police, no charge. Not so much as a fine for causing a public disturbance. And you just think to yourself, is this, would the same thing have happened were this person, even, never mind misogyny in this case, if they were just an ordinary member of the public, would that sort of thing have happened? And you just sort of, and again, I go back to, because I initially at this point, I was reading these two stories and thinking, when Labour come in, they're going to have to start putting in more legislation to deal, if the police don't feel, or the Crown Prosecution Service don't feel that they've got the tools to deal with what should clearly be behaviour that should be punished, are Labour going to have to bring in specific offences just to make it clear? And that got me to thinking just how much legislation Labour brought in order to make sure that people, by and large, are being treated equally, and the Conservatives won. And people will argue that was ultimately the Liberal Democrats because it was during their coalition years, but won. Gay marriage, that's it. Anyway, right, let's go to some questions. Don saying there, Labour were insulating and draft-proofing homes too. Had that continued, people would be so badly hit by energy price hikes. That is indeed true. There were so many things they did as well. I mean, Autism Act, the Electoral Commission, which the Conservatives have now nobbled again. There were, I mean, it wasn't just insulation of homes as well. Like social housing itself was brought up to being of livable standard, and like 1 million homes. Here they're saying, I've got more tangents in reply to an algebra maths teacher. I asked a question. Sorry, I'll miss you. If you ask your question again, I'll see it. In fact, but I go through an initial thing first before we come to the questions, particularly when we've got technical problems. Perhaps there's a case for her to bring a private prosecution against the initial complainant. Possibly, yeah, but then you've got the problem of it's civil action, and she's a sitting MP, and it's an unnecessary distraction. At the end of the day, it should have been a criminal offence. And her main gripe is, Stella Creasy, her main gripe is, there's now a record of the facts that a complaint has been made about her. So her children are now on a social services list, basically. So if someone else was to make, and what she's also saying, the police have given a green light to trolls. What if someone else looks at that and goes, oh, nothing will happen to me, I'll do the same thing? What if the investigation is taken more seriously because she's already flagged now, or her children are already flagged as having had it? Because we know how it works. You know, you could have children who genuinely are neglected or abused, and investigations carried out, nothing's found out, but you think to yourself, well, maybe we just didn't find it. So if someone else makes an allegation, do you take that more seriously? It is right. The police have basically given. I mean, it was bad enough the person not being charged, but if at least it wasn't, they were not charged, but the police were making it quite clear. Sometimes you see a situation where the police will say, we're not going to charge them on this occasion, but they were very lucky. They should be more mindful, because then at least you're sending the message to someone else who might want to do it that they may not be so lucky. Whereas what the police have done here is not only said, we will not take action, they've actually said, this is a legitimate form of political protest. In fact, the word legitimate, I think, was used. An offence of vexatious allegations. I mean, I think we've seen for a while that we need them in civil cases anyway, because the number of times the very wealthy people will take someone to court over something they've said, knowing full well they can't afford to defend the case. So they retract what they've said in public, even though it was valid. This is why, of course, MPs have parliamentary privilege, the ability to say whatever they like in Parliament, as long as it's in Parliament, in the debating chamber, and cannot be sued. They cannot be taken to court. And that is to stop, particularly wealthy businessmen, but it could be anyone, taking MPs to court for calling them out, shady business practices out. But in the public forum, of course, they're not protected. Clive is saying, I'm pretty sure if child abuse allegations were vexatious made against the chief constable, the outcome would have been very different. Well, this absolutely, and I cannot see, we cannot, and this particular case must be misogynism, because she's an MP, right? She's a senior member of society in many ways, and for the police to have said that, it's not because she's just like some ordinary member of the public there, where they can easily dismiss them because they can't be asked with the paperwork. This is an MP. In theory, they could be making a rod for their own back here, because she could make a serious issue out of this now. I look at it and I think it can only be misogynism, can't it? Nice illumination today. It's because I have no illumination. I usually have two lights, or I won't be in future, two lights directly on my face, which has been it didn't used to, but maybe I've got a new webcam as well recently. Maybe it's just been overexposing it. So I have now, well, the only light is direct. It's not even directly above me. It's just the normal light that does bugger all. Because the VCam obviously overcompensates for brightness. Is anyone else seeing just Tory and Greens in a postal ballot? Have Lab Greens agreed something? Depending on where you live, Simon, maybe. Bracknell Forest, I was mentioning a stream on my own channel on Saturday that Bracknell Forest looks like there's been some sort of agreement going on because there's 50, this is somewhere in Berkshire or somewhere down south, and there's 15 wards there. And in 12 of the 15 wards, if you think about Labour, Lib Dems and Greens as like the progressive, they're not an alliance, but if you think about them as being the progressive parties, mainstream parties in England, then in 12 of those 15 wards, there's only one of those parties represented. And there's been suggestions in the national media that maybe they've privately come to some arrangement. They deny it, or at least they haven't said they've come to it, but it looks very much like a bit of an agreement. But I don't think you'll see, you always see a little bit of this locally, but I don't think you'll see lots of it, but we will see. The flip side is that legitimate allegations made against MPs, not saying they're only to be made, may be considered legitimate process and not taken seriously. Yeah, well, it does invite people to make serious allegations against MPs, believing even if the next time someone does this, action is taken, they may reasonably argue in court that they were only acting on the advice, particularly if it happens in Leicestershire. They can say they were only acting on the advice of the police, that this is legitimate protest. It is absolute insanity, and I cannot understand. I think this would be a good urgent question. Braverman or Philp must be forced to defend these decisions. Yes, it could well be. I strongly suspect Braverman herself wouldn't turn up to answer the question. She'd probably send like a PPA or something, like the most junior of the junior. But she could well decide to raise. I'm sure she'll have written to the Home Office or one of the ministers in the Home Office about it. But the story, I only saw the story yesterday, I have to say. So making baseless allegations is now part of the political process, but peaceful process is outlawed. Anyone else see the inconsistency? You're quite right, Uncle Heavy there. Yes. So now, if you are deemed to be a nuisance standing on a street with a placard, not causing anyone any bother, you could now be arrested and even imprisoned. But yeah, if you make a vexatious allegation that someone is abusing children when you know they're not, it's not just that you've seen something you were wrong, you know you're not, you know you're making it up. Yeah, that's fine. There's huge inconsistencies. It is in Berkshire between Ascot and Woking. See, I don't really do down south. I know roughly where Birmingham, Cornwall, and London are. And people, when they have to describe where anyone else is, I know where East Anglia is, I suppose. That's like the arse of the pig, isn't it? Morning, you'll have to start again with this one. We may do. We're going to give it more minutes anyway, because obviously we started very late. It looks like there's people talking about voting strategies for Thursday, because we've got local elections in parts of England and all of Northern Ireland, I believe, this Thursday. Patrick saying, I'll be voting on Thursday, but the Tory got more than half the total votes last time. I'm in an area which is similar. The thing is, since last time, the Conservatives have become less popular, as bizarre as that is. In my ward, for example, the Conservatives won handsomely. They got over 4 times as much anyway as the Labour candidates. But last time, there were also other candidates standing. Whereas this year, in my ward, there's 2 seats up for grabs, and there are 2 Conservative candidates, and there are 2 Labour candidates. So it is it is an actual dogfight between Labour and the Conservatives. The Conservatives are still likely to win, but now that all of the anti-Tory votes will go to the Labour candidates, or those people will spoil their ballots. And given that the Conservatives are less popular now, and Labour are more popular, it might be interesting. I still think in my area, the Conservative candidates are probably going to win, but it will be interesting. You never know. Let's have a look. My answers are way too long. Oh, they could get longer, yeah. This is why when I do my own videos, I script them, you see. You have pre-settled status, expires in 2 years, but you return to Spain 2019. Could I vote too? I mean, are you registered? You can't vote this Thursday if you're not already registered, because it would be too late to register. I don't know if it's a case of pre-settled status, so not a UK citizen, but now not living in the UK. I strongly suspect not. But anyone who is not registered to vote at this point, basically, there are 3 things you need to do to be able to vote, aren't there, I suppose? You need to have registered to vote. You need to make sure you've got your ID. And you need to be where you're polling. If you haven't arranged for postal voting, you need to be where your ballot box is going to be. And if those things haven't been set up, then you go. Sound is better, but still needs work. Any issues with the sound will now just be because we're streaming via Graham's computer, because I'm now using a specific podcast microphone. I was using a microphone. Technically, the microphone I did use was a better one, but it's a studio microphone. So whereas this one is used to being in a room where you haven't got lots of soundproofing. So this until we get better internet connection, this is it. He was saying, I suggested to my daughter to vote Greens in Reigate, Surrey area, to tell her network's local connection. She lives with her mum there. I'm back in Wales. Oh, yeah, so you won't be voting. But yeah, I mean, Graham has been posted in the chat, and I suppose for people watching not live later on, there'll be one in the description below. For those who want to vote tactically, the tactical voting website, it won't help everyone, but where there is a clear progressive candidate to vote for, it will do. You have a script. I don't have a script for this now. I don't do scripts for live sessions, which is why I can go off on tangents quite easily. I only have scripts for my pre-recorded videos. And even then, sometimes go off on a tangent, but I usually bring myself back quickly. How do I see the next 6 months going? In what regards? I think there's a lot of things could happen in 6 months. In terms of the immediate aftermath, so in terms of the exciting things on offer this month, I think British politics is far too chaotic to think 6 months into the future. But in the following month, so we've got the local elections this week, right? The Conservatives have already made sure that they're going to stop it featuring in the mainstream media headlines, because the results. Now, I will caution you, Graham is presumably going to be talking about the early results on the Friday morning stream, but do bear in mind that the results that will be coming through overnight are the ones that are most likely to favour Labour. So you may get an impression on Friday morning that it's an absolute rout and that Labour are picking up seats left, right and centre. And you think, oh my God, this could be bad. Do bear in mind that the ones the Conservatives are more likely to be winning or holding, their key battlegrounds, are the counting for those will go on for longer, because the Conservatives are stronger in rural areas where it takes longer to get the counts in. So so on Friday morning, you'll see some interesting results, but you won't see a picture yet. That'll be later on. So normally the Saturday morning papers would be where you'd get the front pages of the newspapers reporting on the general view. But there's the coronation on Saturday, so that's been sorted out. Sunday, you might expect something in the Sunday papers. No, not on the front pages, because they'll be talking about who was wearing what at the coronation and probably moaning about Harry again. And then Monday, we may get some interest. According to the Times, we may be hearing that after the coronation, Simon Case, the cabinet secretary, is resigning. Maybe. That's what they think anyway. So that'll probably cover the Monday papers as well. So you won't get a lot of that. But at the same time, the results will still be the results. If they're really bad for the Conservatives, next week, is it next week? It's sometime this month. The DCO, the Democratic Conservative Organisation, this is the Boris Johnson fan club, right? They are attempting to be the Boris Johnson cult. They're staging a conference. I think it's next week. It's either next week or the week after. And it is intended to capitalise on what they're hoping are going to be bad election results for the Conservatives. So they will be trying to undermine Sunak and try to get Boris Johnson reinstalled. I strongly suspect it won't work, but nonetheless, there'll be some blue on blue action next week. Obviously, Labour's position will be, and I'm going to do a video on this on my own channel for noon today, already recorded it. People may have seen an interview that Starmer did yesterday, and part of it he was saying, because we're all getting ready for the Conservatives taking heavy losses, aren't we? We're thinking, are they going to lose 500, 600, 800, maybe 1,000? They say they're going to lose 1,000, which means they don't think they're going to lose 1,000. And Starmer's saying, what are they on about? Why are they talking about losing any seats? He pointed out that in 2019, the last time these elections came up for grabs, there were Theresa May lost 1,300 seats, a net loss of 1,300 seats, which means she actually lost more because she will have made gains. So a net loss of 1,300 seats, a net loss of control of 40 councils. And this was just before she was forced to resign. So this was in the dying days of an unpopular prime minister, and she took massive losses. Now the same ones are up for grabs. Starmer's saying, why aren't you, if you reckon you've got your party back on the road to victory, why aren't you targeting gains? Why are the Conservatives saying, oh, if we only lose 800 seats, it's a victory? Starmer's basically saying, why aren't you saying we should be now gaining some of those seats we lost? But they're not, are they? They're going to lose hundreds more, which means that whatever happens this week, the results for Sunak are going to be worse than they were for Theresa May. And those results in 2019 were the second worst, sorry. They were the second worst local election results for the Conservatives ever. And Sunak his people are trying to claim victory for doing even worse than that. That's basically what's happening. But anyway, Cathal, yes, this is another thing that may be happening this month. The Privileges Committee will be free to report on Johnson and expected soon. I don't think expected soon is the right phrase, but after the local elections, if the Privileges Committee, because we don't know if they've even come to a conclusion, if they've come to a conclusion, then yes, you would expect that to be reported maybe next week as well. But there's not been any word on whether they've even finished. So it could still be like June. But in theory, so there'll be several things happening. In fact, I'll tell you the main political stories probably this month. The Daily Mail are trying to push the Sue Gray thing again. They're claiming that an internal investigation has found that she breached the Civil Service Code. But of course, this is a partisan investigation. There was no independent barrister investigating that, like, for Dominic Raab and so on, or Richard Sharp. So that'll be dodgy as hell. But nonetheless, the Daily Mail are going to push that quite heavily. And the Tories, of course, as well. But then you've got the Privileges Committee investigation. You've got the local election results. You've got the Democratic Conservative Organisation, which is You know, they've styled their name basically on the People's Republic, Democratic Republic of Korea, haven't they? Really. So yeah, there's plenty of potential intrigue coming this month. I can't really think 6 months in the future. I really can't think. Although, if we did have to think, what are we going to be looking at 6 months in the future? We'll have a better idea of where the economy is going in terms of, are the current predictions for overall contraction still on? We'll have a better idea about what's happening to inflation. We do expect it to come down, but you know, how much? And also, it'll be interesting to see how the NHS is coping, because we'll be getting into autumn then, and that is, you know, Rishi Sunak made a great play of reducing waiting lists. Is that going to happen? It'll also be interesting to see where the NHS strikes have gone by then. But lots happening this month alone without even trying to think about 6 months' time. And I am hoping that in about a year's time, I still think if I had to put money on when the election will be, I know they've said they want autumn, I would still put my money on next May if I had to. But anyway, there we go. Thanks for coming on. Thanks particularly for those who were very patient early on waiting. Hopefully we will not have issues on that level at any rate again. Have a good morning. Have a good rest of the day. And until next time, I'll see you later.